In his renowned 2001 book Death in the Air, American physician and author Dr. Leonard Horowitz discussed government programs that use aircraft to disperse chemical agents into the sky, substances that directly affect human health, the environment, and climate. He cited official documents and recordings linking these programs to objectives such as population control and clandestine experimentation. Horowitz specifically referred to Evergreen Helicopters, a company funded by the Central Intelligence Agency, which allegedly sprayed millions of gallons of chemicals over U.S. skies and beyond, as part of secret programs conducted on unwitting populations. These programs became known as the chemtrail conspiracy, a term formed by combining chemical and trail. The term denotes a chemical trail in contrast to contrail, which is the condensation trail left by water vapor from jet engines, visible in the sky as thin white lines behind airplanes. However, unlike contrails, which typically dissipate within minutes, chemtrails linger ominously in the atmosphere, breaking down in suspicious patterns, often accompanied by sudden weather shifts. What's striking is that the idea of chemtrails is not mere conspiracy fiction, as often portrayed. It draws support from officially declared programs such as the Solar Radiation Management Initiative. This real government-backed geoengineering project, conducted by universities and corporations, aims to reduce solar radiation by dispersing chemical and metallic particles, like artificial sunshades, into the stratosphere to cool the Earth. The concern, however, lies in the lack of regulatory oversight. Substances like aluminum oxide, barium titanate, and strontium have been shown in studies to have toxic effects on the nervous and immune systems. Despite this, in 2010, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences published a report recommending the expansion of weather modification experiments as part of climate change mitigation. Since then, reports of aerial spraying have increased, especially across the Middle East, often followed by outbreaks of mysterious illnesses or prolonged droughts. In his 2004 book Chemtrails Confirmed, Canadian journalist and author William Thomas presented testimonies from pilots, police officers, U.S. Marines, air traffic controllers, and cargo crew members, all of whom described unusual patterns of unidentified substances being released into the sky. Unsurprisingly, the World Health Organization has remained silent on the issue, and mainstream media avoids addressing it. But independent researchers, such as Dr. Nick Gøtzsche, have provided field and lab evidence of heavy metals found in air and soil samples, materials unlikely to result from nature or normal aircraft emissions. Even more unsettling is the connection between chemtrails and other research centers like the HAARP project, which some accuse of manipulating weather and the Earth's electromagnetic environment. Thus, chemtrails may represent a weapon in an invisible war, a war against nature and against humanity itself. Their risks extend beyond respiratory disease to mood disorders, increased cancer rates, reduced fertility, and the poisoning of crops, leaving populations increasingly dependent on monopolized systems of food and medicine. Speaking of food, did you know that most of what now sits in our kitchens isn't farm-grown, but lab-designed? Agriculture has become a tightly controlled system dominated by colossal corporations that dictate what we eat and how we eat it. Leading the charge is Monsanto, a company synonymous with food monopolization and nature manipulation, driven by motives that likely exceed mere profit. Founded in the United States in the early 20th century, Monsanto has, in recent decades, transformed into a biotech giant monopolizing the genetically modified seed market. The issue isn't just genetic modification, it's the monopolistic policies that accompany it. These modified seeds yield only one crop and cannot be replanted, forcing farmers to buy new seeds from the company each year, along with the matching herbicides and fertilizers, in a cycle of agricultural enslavement. This technology, known as Terminator seeds, has been described as a tool to globally dominate agriculture and impoverish farmers, especially in developing nations. The documentary Food Incorporated shed light on how corporations like Monsanto dominate the market, going as far as to pursue legal action against those who attempt to preserve traditional seeds. Instead of promoting sustainable agriculture, the system encourages industrial farming reliant on pesticides and chemical fertilizers, methods that yield food laced with toxins. Among the most controversial of these pesticides is Roundup, which contains glyphosate, a substance the International Agency for Research on Cancer classified as possibly carcinogenic to humans. However, later systematic reviews and statements from bodies such as the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and European regulatory agencies suggested there was insufficient evidence to prove typical glyphosate use causes cancer. This controversy underscores claims that Monsanto commands a vast political influence network, with former executives rotating between top positions at the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration. This phenomenon, known as the revolving door, highlights the collusion between the deep state and multinational corporations and reveals that Monsanto is not merely an agricultural company, but a strategic arm of the emerging global order, one that aims to establish a centralized food system in which a ruling elite programs taste, suppresses immunity, and subjugates populations. As of early 2025, more than 67,000 lawsuits were still pending against Monsanto, brought by individuals diagnosed with cancer. One landmark case concluded in 2018 in California, where a court awarded a historic verdict in favor of a victim, ordering Monsanto to pay $289 million in damages, later reduced to $21 million upon appeal. This ruling set a legal precedent that opened the floodgates to hundreds of other claims, evidence of a long-standing collusion between Monsanto and regulatory agencies like the EPA, which allegedly ignored early scientific warnings about glyphosate due to political and financial pressure. It was also revealed that Monsanto engaged in media manipulation, tampered with scientific studies, through what is now termed bot science, and financed fraudulent research to whitewash its pesticides while influencing policy decisions at the expense of public health. All of this reinforces the belief that Monsanto's products were never intended to enhance agricultural productivity, but to create a global dependency on a polluted food system, fully controlled by unaccountable economic forces and shielded by legal experts skilled in manipulating legislation. In 2018, the German conglomerate Bayer acquired Monsanto in a massive deal worth over $60 billion. Many saw this merger as an attempt to erase the tainted Monsanto name, now synonymous with corruption and suspicion, without halting the underlying practices. Monsanto has become a symbol of a new era, an era where sovereignty is manufactured through food, wars are waged with seeds, and people are enslaved through hunger, fulfilling the adage, "He who controls oil controls nations, he who controls food controls the people." This problem extends beyond agricultural corporations like Monsanto to food manufacturing giants accused of transforming from food producers into disease makers, ensuring ongoing dependence on the pharmaceutical industry on one side and weakening society on the other. These companies package genetically modified foods into appealing products laden with sugar, saturated fats, and artificial flavorings, all directly linked to diseases like diabetes, obesity, digestive disorders, and cancer. Take, for instance, Nestlé, the Swiss multinational and one of the world's largest food companies. With global brands like Kit Kat, Nescafé, Nesquik, and Maggi, Nestlé stands accused of producing food products, over 60% of which are classified as unhealthy. The company allegedly targets developing markets with high sugar, high fat, preservative-laden products, backed by aggressive marketing campaigns focused on children. It also faces accusations over exploitative practices such as groundwater extraction and exporting modified baby formula to African nations. Similarly, PepsiCo is not only the maker of Pepsi but also owns brands like Lay's, Quaker, and Gatorade. The company is accused of promoting products high in sugar, sodium, and synthetic additives through misleading advertising strategies. According to numerous medical reports, consumption of these products is directly linked to obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases. A third example is the American company Cargill, the world's largest privately held corporation in the agriculture and food industries. Unlike typical food producers, Cargill does not supply food directly to consumers. Instead, it provides raw materials to most other companies and exerts control over supply chains, from cultivation to distribution, making it a central instrument in monopolizing the food system and flooding markets with industrial substances of poor nutritional value. The company is accused of dominating the production of genetically modified corn and soybeans, as well as high-fructose corn syrup, also known as glucose syrup, a major contributor to the global epidemics of obesity and fatty liver disease. These are merely examples of corporations embedded within powerful media networks that promote their products as healthy options, backed by biased or fabricated studies that downplay their risks, mirroring the tactics used by tobacco companies in the past century. This issue was addressed by American journalist and author Paul Roberts in his book The End of Food, where he stated that the global food system has morphed into a massive centralized apparatus driven by profit rather than health or sustainability. He explored the dire consequences of excessive reliance on industrial agriculture. Similarly, investigative journalist Eric Schlosser chronicled in his book Fast Food Nation the rise of fast food culture after World War II, beginning with American diners in California and expanding worldwide. He examined the structural corruption of agricultural conglomerates that impose dominance over farmers, the dangers of foodborne illness due to unhygienic industrial processes, and the overwhelming advertising campaigns that foster early loyalty to fast food, ultimately fostering unhealthy consumption patterns. Together, agricultural corporations, food giants, and pharmaceutical companies form a closed loop. The cycle begins with corporations producing cheap, appealing, disease-inducing food, followed by pharmaceutical companies offering drugs that manage, but do not cure, the resulting illnesses, securing a continuous dependency. In essence, most of our food today is no longer free nor natural. It has become engineered, packaged, and manufactured in labs at the behest of corporations, not harvested from the soil. Much of it is little more than slow-acting poison wrapped in glossy foil. Every meal brings us closer to illness, as its components have likely never passed through a farmer's hands but rather through genetic codes and laboratories. We are no longer eating food. We are consuming the byproducts of complex biological experiments with devastating effects on human health. Numerous studies have linked genetically modified products to autoimmune diseases, hormonal imbalances, fertility issues, and even cancer. One such study was conducted in 2012 by molecular biology professor Gilles Eric Seralini of the University of Normandy. He fed rats for 2 years on genetically modified corn, strain NK603, and found significant increases in tumor size and frequency, as well as liver and kidney damage. Naturally, the study faced harsh criticism from the scientific community due to alleged methodological flaws. It was retracted despite protests from Seralini's team but later republished in 2014. What's more alarming is that genetically modified crops have been integrated into the food supply chains of most countries without consumer awareness. While European populations demand clear labeling for GM products, nations like the United States, Canada, and others refuse such transparency, leading many researchers and citizens to question the very nature of what we eat. Is it real food, or lab-altered substances crafted from scratch, never touched by soil? In recent times, we've seen numerous viral videos showing meats, fruits, and vegetables that appear almost plastic. Are these claims grounded in reality, or are they exaggerated conspiracies? The truth is no longer concealed. A vast portion of meat from industrial farms undergoes food engineering. Cattle and poultry are fed genetically modified grains, growth hormones, and antibiotics to accelerate development. Post-slaughter, the meat is treated with chemicals to preserve color and suppress odor. So, can we still call this meat in the traditional sense? Or is it now a synthetic product, tampered with from its genetic roots to its final packaging? As for fruits, the excessive use of substances such as furfural or sodium nitrate to hasten ripening or enhance appearance transforms them from natural produce into industrial commodities bearing no resemblance to true fruits and vegetables, save for their external shape and a flavor manufactured by chemical agents, many of which pose grave threats to human health. Even more alarming are the persistent claims regarding plastic rice, widely reported in media coverage, especially in India and China. It has been alleged that certain vendors mix natural rice with pellets crafted from recycled plastic or compressed industrial starch. While official investigations have not confirmed the widespread presence of such adulterated rice in mainstream markets, documented reports do exist of seized contaminated shipments and tests revealing that some rice neither burns nor decomposes, melting instead, raising a more disturbing question. What if these are not isolated incidents? What if they form part of a broader scheme to counterfeit nature in pursuit of goals far beyond profit, goals aimed at controlling health, food, and even the human genome? Worsening this reality is the collapse or infiltration of health regulatory systems in many developing nations where independent laboratories are silenced, and most of these questionable products are funneled into impoverished countries that lack the infrastructure to trace the origin of their food or analyze its composition. This opens the door to nutritional chaos, in which the pressing question of the future may no longer be, is this food? But rather, who made this food and how? Although governments are supposed to serve as guardians of their people, in practice, many appear to protect corporations, even at the expense of public health, functioning as silent partners in a conspiracy steered by money, influence, and electoral promises. This collusion is most evident in matters of health, food, and pharmaceuticals. Regulatory bodies like the U.S. Food and Drug Administration or the European Food Safety Authority often bow to the pressure of lobbying groups and vested interests. Some of the studies submitted to these agencies for product approval are, in fact, funded by the very corporations seeking the licenses, fueling ongoing debates in academic and media circles regarding transparency and integrity. Additionally, the revolving door phenomenon, well documented in both the United States and Europe, highlights how officials routinely alternate between regulatory agencies and senior positions within major food and pharmaceutical companies. One of the most prominent examples is Michael Taylor, who held positions within the FDA, served as a lawyer and legal advisor to Monsanto, and later returned to the FDA as Deputy Commissioner for Foods. This career trajectory sparked widespread controversy about his loyalties, especially given his vocal support for policies facilitating the use of genetically modified crops. Hence, many began to question, can his decisions be trusted? Whose interests does he truly represent? This issue is not confined to the West. Across the Arab world, Africa, and Latin America, corporations exert influence through funding, grants, and collaborative programs designed to market technologies, pesticides, and dietary supplements, despite objections from principled local scientists who are gagged, have their laboratories shuttered, or are barred from publishing. In some cases, the involvement goes even deeper. Investigative reports have revealed secret contracts between corporations and governments to promote vaccines, medications, or genetically modified crops, often containing clauses that shield the companies from legal liability in the event of adverse effects. The COVID-19 pandemic offers a glaring example. Secret agreements were signed between major pharmaceutical firms and various governments, especially within the European Union, as well as countries like Argentina, South Africa, and others. These contracts mandated total secrecy over pricing and deal terms, granted companies legal immunity from lawsuits over side effects, and in some cases, even forced governments to bear the cost of any resulting compensation, relieving the manufacturers of all responsibility. Some vaccines were even provided to certain countries at extremely low cost or free of charge, leading many to echo the proverb, "Even the hawk does not throw its chicks away for nothing." All of this raises a grave question. Who truly governs global health decisions? Governments, colossal corporations, or both in what is now termed corporatocracy, the rule of corporations? This term is used to describe the domination of multinational conglomerates over political, economic, and social decision-making centers within a state. When money grants the power to shape policy, laws become mere instruments serving elite interests. Human beings are reduced to entries on profit sheets, cogs in a vast legislative and economic machine working in favor of capital, redefining health, medicine, and nutrition based not on medical truths but on commercial advantage. In such an equation, honest science is sidelined, and every voice daring to expose the truth is silenced. Naturally, the media becomes the camouflage arm, its role no longer to reveal reality, but to obscure it. It does not merely withhold the truth. It drowns it in a flood of lies, misinformation, distorted data, and meticulously crafted narratives. Thus, rather than being a conduit for truth, media morphs into a tool for its distortion or burial. Major channels, newspapers, and websites are funded by the same companies that manufacture pharmaceuticals, genetically modified foods, or chemical pesticides. News becomes advertising, investigative journalism turns into covert promotion, and pundits evolve into experts in deception and obscuration rather than enlightenment. In the United States, for instance, pharmaceutical advertising on television networks exceeds $6 billion annually, placing those networks under intense commercial pressure not to antagonize their sponsors. Worse still, aggressive campaigns are launched to discredit anyone who challenges the official narrative. Independent scientists are labeled as science deniers or purveyors of disinformation, and their voices are systematically purged from public discourse. Many physicians and researchers have been deplatformed, had their accounts suspended, or become targets of orchestrated smear campaigns on social media, whether in service of governments, corporations, or complicit media entities. Algorithms are also weaponized through what is known as shadow banning, where posts or videos aiming to educate the public are hidden or their reach drastically reduced, without the content creator's knowledge. This form of soft censorship does not delete dissenting views outright, but buries them into obscurity. Governments, too, through media outlets, often resort to phrases such as pseudoscience, conspiracy theory, or disinformation to strip legitimacy from any alternative discourse that questions or critiques the official narrative. Meanwhile, mouthpieces of the pharmaceutical industry and architects of corporate health policies are given unchallenged platforms, representing the goals of corporatocracy with remarkable fidelity. The COVID-19 pandemic remains the clearest illustration of this media collusion and both soft and at times hard censorship. Entire YouTube channels and Facebook pages were shut down for merely posing legitimate questions about vaccines under the pretext of spreading misinformation, while platforms promoting unproven drugs or concealing known side effects were allowed to operate freely. We are therefore witnessing the manufacturing of an alternative consciousness, one that doesn't inform us of events but persuades us to accept them blindly. When corporations shape the media narrative, the press becomes an appendage of a system that profits from illness and purchases complicit silence. Thus, the threads of conspiracy stretch from the air we breathe to the food we consume, from the pills we take to the thoughts we are allowed to think. Here, silence becomes betrayal, and remaining mute amounts to complicity. Knowledge must become a mission, a transmission of awareness, to liberate ourselves from media guardianship, to search independently, to read beyond the mainstream, and to question everything served to us prepackaged. As we have seen, media can conceal more than it reveals, and mislead more than it enlightens. A return to traditional farming practices and natural seeds emerges as a cornerstone in resisting the engineered industrialization of food. It is worth noting that, in recent years, hundreds of initiatives have emerged across the globe advocating what is now known as food sovereignty, an effort by people to reclaim their right to produce their own sustenance, free from the grip of corporations that enslave them through engineered food systems. These systems deliberately undermine effective health prevention, which begins not with pills, but with lifestyle changes, bolstering immunity through wholesome nutrition and physical activity, understanding the body's role in psychological and physiological balance, and returning to traditional healing methods and alternative medicine without succumbing to the derision often directed at them. Modern medicine, as we have seen, tend in most cases to address symptoms rather than root causes. Therefore, we must reconstruct our understanding of science, health, and credibility through a collective awareness and a society grounded in intellectual independence, one that dares to ask questions and possesses the acuity to critically interpret reality, unmarred by emotional manipulation or censorship. Most crucially, we must grasp that the battle is not merely for the body, but for the consciousness that teeters between those who would reduce us to clients of perpetual pharmacies and those who yearn for us to be free, healthy in both sight and insight, to realize that in this era of overwhelming complexity, illness is no longer a mere biological malfunction. It has become a fully fledged enterprise. An enterprise orchestrated by a vast economic, political, and media machinery, managing pain, profiting from human suffering, and transforming individuals into open markets where lives are measured in profit margins and health and stock shares. This is a meticulously integrated system operating in seamless coordination, from biotech firms to global health institutions, from laboratories to television screens, from education systems to the media, each contributing, directly or indirectly, to entrenching a mindset of compliance with a model of disease management rather than cure. The only path to resisting this all-encompassing dominion lies in the courage to question. For when questions arise, so too does the journey of awareness, no longer a luxury in a time of mental manipulation, but the sole vessel of salvation adrift in a turbulent sea of calculated lies, conscripted media, and education stripped of its essence. Do you still believe that the idea of a global conspiracy is mere fiction or unwarranted skepticism, despite the evidence of elite control over the very threads of food, medicine, and air? How natural seeds were turned into monopolistic tools, vaccines into levers of coercion, and information into instruments of conditioning. Then consider illness not merely as a medical condition, but as a social, political, and economic phenomenon. For when it is deliberately manufactured, it ceases to be a symptom and becomes a message. We either decipher that message and reclaim our sovereignty over our bodies, minds, and consciousness, or we surrender ourselves willingly to those who have mastered the craft of manufacturing disease.